very surprised if it doesn't.
Okay, so you're welcome. How are you?
Good. Just shared some news on
What's the news?
uh so I guess yesterday or no, today the governor of New York State did a press conference and she announced that Tesla's going to invest half a billion to install a supercomputer in Buffalo, New York. Um I'm pretty sure it's Dojo. It's just by the amount, and all these publications are calling it Dojo and not in an Nvidia system. I'm pretty sure the Nvidia systems Tesla would get are more expensive. So this, I'm pretty sure it's Dojo. But anyway, I posted it.
I pinned it at the top. Matt, what are your initial thoughts on this?
Hope it's both. Like maybe it's Dojo. Maybe they're finally getting a big order in from TSMC, but I don't know why you would have to care about that because like if they just put the Nvidia clusters up, which it sounded like, a few weeks back we heard that somebody had gotten approved from Elon to actually build out a bigger data center. I can't recall if that was regarding Nvidia or not. Maybe that's related to this. It could have been that that approval was to finally go forward with Dojo. Who knows? It could be either, but either way, it's a good thing that they weren't computing.
Yeah, this is awesome news. With V12, we're going to need all the compute we can get. And it's interesting, Elon reiterating on the call that more than anything, we're compute constrained for the progress of FSD. So putting up more compute, I imagine it'll probably have Dojo and NVIDIA, but maybe it'll be Dojo only, who knows? Um, I think that's going to be really crucial. And they haven't been doing it. They didn't do an AI day in 2023, right? So this is typically a recruiting event. Again, suggesting that really compute was the limiting factor at this stage more than talent. And then finally, the last point that I thought of was really, the labeling team has been in Buffalo, right? So they've been labeling everything. As we move into V12, there's a lot less labeling required in many cases. I mean, they'd already moved to the auto labeler, but now you kind of are just finding the video clip that you think is a good driving behavior, and it's already sort of pre-labeled by the driver's manual controls. So it's possible there could have been a planned reduction in staff as a result of some of these changes they've made where they're less reliant on labeling. And I mean, this is a whole thing with Buffalo. They have certain employment commitments that they made. I think it was part of the Solar City deal too. And they said we're going to have a certain number of jobs here, so that they ended up just started labeling autopilot data there. But if they reduce that, what are they going to do? Okay, well, great. Now they have these Dojo jobs, and they can run a data center there. And I mean, that's going to be huge for the community there.
So the governor said Tesla. Well, here I'll just play the part.
I'm also proud to announce that Tesla is investing $500 million to build their next supercomputer right here in Buffalo. How about that? Two super.
So when she says their next supercomputer, I feel like this is Dojo, but maybe it's Nvidia. I don't know. All the
Yeah,
outlets are calling it Dojo, but maybe they have information on. I don't.
it comes down to how technical you think the governor was when they were speaking.
Exactly. I highly doubt they would be checking.
I mean, I think like any data center Tesla builds would probably have Dojo and Nvidia. Like it sounds like from Elon's comments that he said Dojo is running and we are doing training jobs on it. But he's always said the real test is going to be when the engineers want to use Dojo instead of Nvidia. And it doesn't sound like they've crossed that barrier yet, especially with the way Nvidia's been improving their hardware. So I think they probably will have Dojo there. I would hope that if the Dojo project does well, Dojo 1.5, Dojo 1.2, that the majority of their training capacity additions could be Dojo. Google says they do 90% of their training on TPUs, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some NVIDIA hardware there if you are sort of running all the infrastructure, running all the cooling, everything, the networking for a data center anyway.
Yeah, the other thing, there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. And so this is a little bit of conjecture, but if you had to go to Elon to get approval for something, it's probably not to buy something you already are kind of doing. So there's some sense that you would need to get approval probably more for Dojo than a business decision about buying more NVIDIAs and then posting about that. The second thing I would say is um, the engineers at Tesla will continue to probably use whatever compute is more available. So if only 10% of the compute is Dojo, they're probably going to fine tune their models and optimize them for NVIDIA. At some point, when you think Dojo is ready, you have to scale it up large enough that some teams go, you know what, we're going to be able to get a lot more capacity if we just switch over to Dojo, because that's non-zero amount of work. And then the last thing is there will definitely be some pipeline, some training or eval or something that was fine-tuned for CUDA. It's working just fine. There's no new things they want to add to it. So they'll just continue to run that on NVIDIA. There's no point in taking on extra work just to move it over to another piece of hardware.
You know, what my concern really with Dojo V1 is the architecture is really so novel, and they've done so many different things really with the multi-chip module and sort of like it's very simplified. You know, the CPU doesn't have virtual memory or anything like that, and it can't really. It's difficult to really be a drop-in NVIDIA replacement. Like if you hire some new engineer out of college or something, or from one of the other FANG companies, and they're sort of familiar with training on an NVIDIA stack, and you go, okay, we got to learn this new architecture, this Dojo computer, which is probably not really that documented, and we're still working out issues ourselves. And you don't want to slow down the team because you're telling them you want to use Dojo. Like I think they've got an amazing silicon team now with Pete Bannon leading it. Like I think that's great that they are trying to build their own silicon that will meet the needs better. But yeah, that's going to be the real test when you hear Tesla really saying, "Yeah, we're just expanding Dojo. That's what, our team prefers to use now as opposed to Nvidia." And I think one thing that could really help with that, as well as help the value to other companies, is if they made it much easier for people to migrate their training workloads from Nvidia to Dojo without doing a ton of rewriting or a ton of work.
Do you guys remember the cost of the last 10,000 unit GPU they turned on? I think it was in like August or September of last year. Because that was an NVIDIA based one, I think, but I don't remember what that one cost.
I think H100s are going for around 40,000 for like a DGX system with a few H100s in it or something like that. So um, it's not 40,000 times 10,000, but maybe 40,000 times 10,000 divided by four or something like that.
You also have to add in like power
Oh yeah, they got
racks,
like
all that other stuff. Yeah.
InfiniBand networking and everything too. So that's like a whole other deal. So it was expensive. They said they're spending $2 billion on compute over the next year. The last time they mentioned it.
Yeah, one other thing to keep in mind here, Omar, is like when the Dojo was announced, it was pretty novel. But then I think about a year or so later, the TPU-4 paper was published by Google. And in that, they actually showed not just a 2D lattice of chips, but a 3D lattice that they were doing. So it's been proven that it can work. And per my understanding, there's people in the audience who know more than me, but per my understanding, that was also a very basic ASIC design. So I think there is some precedent that it could work pretty well for these very specific training needs. And I think maybe it's Dojo 2, maybe it's Dojo 1. I don't know which one they're going to go large scale with, but I imagine that as long as it runs transformer training pretty well and they have a compiler team that's dedicated to it, anybody they hire in to work on this is not going to have to learn any specifics. They're going to write their code the same way they did always. And in a lot of, AI like specific teams, they'll have the people that work on Python to do the modeling and the research side. Sometimes you have somebody who then converts that Python into C++. And then sometimes either the same team or another team is doing like CUDA optimization, which is like very little stuff.
What's weird is, like, why didn't they announce this on the earnings call? Like, this is a big investment. It's kind of weird.
Well, don't you think that's an
Rohan did
indication? This
allude
is
to
not.
it before, obviously, in that tweet the day Elon did his 15% or 25% thing.
Meta, if you were a betting man, would you say this is Dojo or Nvidia,
I
or
would assume it's
mostly?
mostly Dojo with some Nvidia would be my guess.
with a
Because
sprinkle of Nvidia.
yeah, because it's probably like a 90-10 because my assumption is you have some legacy pipelines that run really well on Nvidia. You don't need to rewrite all that. That like just thinking about how Elon thinks, he'd probably pull out his hair if you went up to him and he said, I'm going to spend all this time to rewrite this so we can run on a chipset, and you're going to get basically no gain out of that. That's a total waste of time. So instead, just keep running it on NVIDIA, co-locate it so you don't have bandwidth issues, have some shared storage, so, an SSD wall if you need it, and shared address space, and you're good to go. I make it sound simpler. There's a lot more to obviously getting the power everywhere and cooling, but yeah.
I mean, whether it's Dojo or Nvidia, either way, it's good to see this investment.
Yeah, adding more training compute is probably one of the most important things the company can be doing, along with ramping 4680.
It feels like the training compute to me personally feels like I don't know why they waited so long on it. Maybe there's other reasons, like they were waiting for Dojo. That would make a lot of sense. If they were just going to build out a huge data center of just NVIDIA, and that's what they're doing, and that's what we find out this was, then I think we might as well just call Dojo dead because that would be very weird.
Yeah. And I think they've got a facility here in California in the Palo Alto Center. As a matter of fact, when I went to AI Day 2, they said that's where Dojo is going to be, right on the other side of that wall, here at the Palo Alto Engineering HQ. Since then, we've also heard them setting up a training facility in Texas. Texas does have much lower cost power, much lower cost land. Tesla has obviously a big facility there. And they have a ton of renewable power in Texas, which is also good to be training on renewables if you can. So now, we got the West Coast, we got the middle of the country, and now we got the East Coast too. So we're looking pretty good on natural disasters or anything like that, really. We're pretty well spread out across the country. So I imagine it just took time to figure out really where to put it. And I think the Buffalo location, since they already have a presence there, makes a lot of sense. Although, I'm not sure if, like, my dad used to live in Buffalo when he first came to this country. He went to SUNY Buffalo, and it sounds like a really cold place that isn't necessarily the kind of place where the best talent in the world might want to live. But yeah, I think in terms of just running a data center there, they can probably do it.
Yeah, one thing I would highlight around the comments around labelers, even though they have an auto labeler, they still have labelers because the auto labeler is trained by looking at humans doing either labeling or ranking of labels. This is a very common way to do it, right? You train a reward model. So you can imagine somebody sees two visuals of the vehicle's planned route, how long it stops, etc., in like a simulation or in a real world. The data, probably not real world, but simulation. It comes down, a human would look at it and say, which of these is better? Maybe why? That data then is used to train up the reward model, and then the reward model is used to do the unsupervised learning. So this cluster being built out, if we saw an increase in postings at some point of labelers, I wouldn't freak out and think they're like not doing well. That would probably be more of a signal that they are doing well.
In the replies, Jeremy points out, don't forget about Wyoming.
No, there's
945.
nothing in Wyoming. Kanye's in Wyoming. Someone from Bloomberg DM me. They said, "Hey, I don't think this data center's in Wyoming. I think that's where Kanye lives." I said, "Oh, okay. No data center in Wyoming."
I did want to ask, do you guys see the post from Rafer Tesla about the 4680s from BYD?
Yeah, let's start talking about that. But before that, just a quick announcement. We are not accepting requests to speak. The speakers are set ahead of the space. If you have a question or a comment, please leave it in the replies. I am constantly monitoring the replies. If there's a good question, I'll bring it up. All right, at the top of your screens is a post from Ray on BYD's new battery cells, 4680 and 46120 LFP battery cells. Meta, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I saw this post and I asked, but I didn't get a response as to like what the context was behind this. It's interesting that they're showing this off. I assume this is at an auto show and they're trying to sell this or convince other automotive companies to also buy 4680s. And I don't think you would necessarily do that unless you were close to being ramped up enough to start delivering. So I wonder if BYD is now going to be able to be at a place where they could start shipping some 4680s to Tesla. The thought being that for all the vehicles and the variants of Cybertruck that don't qualify for the credit anyway, you might as well use Chinese BYD 4680s, right?
Well, 4680 LFP, right?
That's
What do
even
you
better,
think?
isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so what would Tesla use them for?
Beast, maybe Cyber Beast or Semi, or maybe they just put them in the Model Y and they say, screw it, we're not giving the credit anyway.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to
Well,
say
they
that.
can put them
I
in
think
Chinese and
this is,
European ones.
yeah. You think
I mean,
they
if,
might,
what were you saying?
you think they might put it in Cybertruck maybe? I mean, they put Cybertruck in some Chinese stores. Do you think they might put it in there? Maybe a rear-wheel drive
It
version?
could be the solution for the standard range Cybertruck. It would explain the low acceleration and the lower range, but would just be the same pack, but with a different type of 4680 cell.
Agreed. Yeah, I think right now, if you're Tesla, there's two things you're competing on. One is to try and get the extra credit from the government, and the other one is to just grow your volumes by any means necessary. If it turns out we can't get enough batteries here, maybe it's just better to sell some variants of the vehicle that just don't have the tax credit. It's like, look, if you want your vehicle, you want it quicker, this is what's available. And maybe they throw in some like, I don't know, laser etching like they did to make people feel better about it.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's just about the Cybertruck. I think Tesla really in time is probably going to move all their vehicles to 4680s, and they'll just ask their suppliers, look, if you can just make the vehicle in this format, that'd be good. We're giving you enough volume that, you can afford to do that. You can make this for us. And they can sell it to other companies as well. But I think really what's underappreciated about Tesla and is really the reason why they sold more EVs than anyone else in 2023 is their diversified cell supply approach. So they mentioned that they've got 5 suppliers now for batteries for Tesla vehicles. They've got, of course, Tesla themselves with the 4680 cells. That's a very small percentage of the mix. Just Cybertruck, which is like, almost no units. And then you've got, of course, Panasonic, their oldest supplier. You've got CATL, who's their biggest supplier. You've got LG Chem, which is one of the biggest battery makers in the world. And you have BYD now. So 5 companies. And no matter what battery you have in your vehicle, you still get the same software UI. There might be minor differences telling you to charge to 100 or telling you to charge to 80, but it's really, transparent to the user. They get the same Tesla experience regardless, the same charging, the same supercharging, regardless of who the cell supplier is. So that's actually the key that's allowed them to scale, that they're buying from all the biggest battery makers in the world as much as they can, as well as making their own cells. And that's really their key advantage.
All right.
Do we know if BYD has announced any timelines around 4680s?
I don't know off the top of my head. Omar, do you?
I haven't heard anything.
All right, I'll try to see if I can find some stuff for another space.
Okay. We have a question in the replies from David Larder. Would BYD set up another plant in the US to build these for the standard range Cybertruck and maybe the next gen?
That would make a lot of sense.
BYD does have some manufacturing in the United States, but they've been nervous about entering the U.S. market due to politics, and they've made some public comments to that effect. So it's unclear, but what we do know is that there is a ton of battery capacity being built up in the United States, and Tesla has the capacity to really bring on any supplier that they think can deliver the volume they need.
Great. Another question. William Lee demonstrated the Wii lithium-ion 1,000 kilometer battery. Have you guys heard about this one? Okay, we're going to skip that then.
And you often kind of hear about like, oh, Toyota's got this great solid state battery, and it's going to get twice the range or whatever, and then it's going to kill Tesla. But they've really got an architecture where if something like that were to emerge, they could just sort of drop it in and start making vehicles with it too.
Question from Waiting for My Aptera. Could this Buffalo data center be dedicated to training for a certain geography like Europe? Meta?
Let me think about that answer.
Wow, that's the first. You're usually ready with the answer.
I want to ask a follow-up question, but it's not possible right now.
You can ask it and they can reply, or they can come up if you want,
I'll just ask
whichever
it
you
in the
prefer.
replies. I'll just ask it in
Okay.
the replies. 1 second.
Yeah, the no request to speak from listeners is not a hard and fast rule. It's really there to just limit moderation to a minimum. But if somebody has, relationship with one of the speakers, they've reached out ahead of time, cleared their questions, sort of thing, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Machine?
Meta wouldn't, certainly for China or something, wouldn't the compute have to be in China physically? I don't know for Europe what the regulations are. Like, how does that work? I guess it just depends on the domain. But if I just don't understand why the compute would be dedicated to one geographic domain if it's not actually situated in there. I don't understand what the benefit would be.
So the rules around the firewall are a little complex. You can understand that like even engineers sitting in the Palo Alto buildings somehow manage to get a factory running in China. So if they're running a factory in China, then obviously they must have been monitoring the lines. They must have been able to observe the vehicles and what they were doing. So it's not a hard and fast rule that nothing can go in and out of the firewall. The the rules are around like how much data can go out. You have to get business certification, you have to have a firewall exception, and there's a policy around it. So the challenge in answering the question, and the reason why I hesitated for a second there, is video leaving is one thing. The neural layout you've learned from the videos leaving is a whole other thing. And then there's a blend in between. So I'm sure China would have a problem. I'm guessing China would have a problem with you just taking a whole bunch of video from random places in China and emitting it outside of China. Like, pretty sure that would not be okay. Um, However, what's been trained leaving, especially from a video feed on a model that doesn't reconstruct the video and only emits plans, might be something you could convince the government of. So does the training need to be there? In part, at least for the video processing part, probably does need to be there. the other part of the question, though, is a little bit more. So the question I wanted to ask was, when they're asking about needing this, are we operating with the assumption that you're going to have to collect the data from China and there is no other countries even close to it or similar to it? And are we operating from the assumption that they don't already run something on the vehicles today in China? Because if they're already running something inside the vehicles, they're already getting a whole bunch of shadow mode about takeovers and things like that. So in theory, they may already have some insight as to how transferable the driving experience actually is.
I mean, they have autopilot and enhanced autopilot, navigate on autopilot, those sort of basic features in China, and they work. So you have kind of an existence proof there that they figured out how to make it work, whatever that method may be. And I think what they've arranged is just that there's a data center in China, that the data that's stored at rest is stored within China, not the United States, that it can't be, used for spying activities, that type of thing. But I think just using it to train the model and improve the product in China, I think is probably okay. And I would bet that they have a GPU cluster within China, and an AI team within China as well.
Is that it? No debate?
No, I'm
We
going to try
need
and
we need more debate, guys. Come on, the ratings are going lower. We need
I'm,
more
I'm going to
coffee bets.
I'm
I'm going
heading to
to
go test drive the new Model 3.
Oh, nice.
I'm gonna,
Meta.
I'm gonna, I'm gonna carefully try and play devil's advocate here. We're getting to a place I'm gonna back out of really quickly. Otherwise, um, here's a scenario: once V12 has launched, and you have your entire team currently focused on that, right? That would make no sense to focus on China before V12 is completed. You have end-to-end working in the United States. You have end-to-end working in Canada. You've driven it down. You're feeling pretty good about where you are. Now you take that model, you run it in shadow mode in China, and you see some issues are cropping up. The metadata of what happened in that situation can still be collected, whether that's via bug reports or that's via there was a stop sign or somebody drove through. Like there's a lot of implicit signals that come up, like the vehicle did something that, or the human did something the vehicle thought was unsafe, or the vehicle was planning something and the human didn't do it. So it tries to figure out why they didn't do it, especially if what the human did, the vehicle didn't think was an acceptable route. So you find all these like disagreements and you continue refining things in the United States, and you see these disagreements continue to go down. I don't know why Tesla wouldn't use that data to help them guide what kind of triggers they use to improve things in the entire world. Right. So if that is what they're doing, if they are using triggers from around the world, then you can imagine that things around the world could also improve. So we'll see. I don't know if I'm not yet comfortable saying that they 100% have to have a data center in China. Sorry,
Machine.
AI compute clustering in China, I should say.
Well, I don't really have anything to say on that. I just want to note I amusingly saw a Reddit post in the Bay Area saying, "Do Tesla drivers turn off their brain while driving? Not checking surroundings when changing lanes, passing someone and moving back in front of them at slower speed? Has the computer made them stupid?" And I don't know where they get this from. As I play with Twitter Spaces, mute, unmute on the highway, I don't know why they would think a Tesla driver would be driving it improperly.
Wait
Well, you're
until
not.
V12. They'll be saying, wow, Tesla drivers are all amazing drivers.
I was going to say, well, Machine is not using FSD, so people are looking at him and thinking Tesla drivers are terrible.
All right,
Did he?
Elon. Hold on.
Has,
Elon, 1 second. Elon just replied to Sawyer and says the governor is correct that this is a Dojo supercomputer, but $500 million, while obviously a large sum of money is only equivalent to a 10,000 H100 system from Nvidia. Tesla will spend more than that on Nvidia hardware this year. The table stakes for being competitive in AI are at least several $billion per year at this point. There you go. That answers that question.
So does that answer that it's both?
And it says Dojo supercomputer.
He says it's a Dojo supercomputer, but in the second paragraph he says they're going to spend even more money on Nvidia.
Yeah, but not necessarily at Buffalo.
Exactly.
I would co-locate it, so I'd be surprised if they don't.
I mean, it's not that big of a deal, right? So this is primarily a Dojo supercomputer. If there's some Nvidia in there, that's great. But I think that this is a bit of a
You cut
that
out there, Emma.
people yeah.
Good.
I don't know what happened. It's one of those.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah. We'll
I
bring
had to
everyone back.
join. I had to join because this is big news. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
Well,
thanks,
just
many
wait.
thanks
Just
to
wait.
Sawyer for pulling this out of Elon.
Yes. Just wait a little bit for people to kind of roll in. Machine is up here, and now we'll get Meta too, probably. Let's see if he has another one.
Thing I've heard about Dojo ever. So much of it's been prototype, and this is, to me, showing more confidence in its viability as a product, at least, than anything else. So I think it's a big positive. But, I don't know how much this. I've never been that excited about Dojo because I don't know how much better they're going to be able to do than Nvidia, and so it's just compute. Like, I get it might be optimized for the type of training they're doing, but it's just saving some money. I don't know how interesting that is. That's why people obviously were trying to use it as a service for other people to train on. So I mean, maybe eventually, but otherwise, maybe it saves them a bit of money. But it's not super exciting to me. It's bullish, just obviously that they're investing in their future of AI training in general. The same though as buying more Nvidia, and I think he also stated they're going to buy AMD chips as well. So I mean, it's all positive.
All right. I'll pin at the top Elon's reply on AMD chips as well. So this is very much a all of the above kind of approach now, Wes, huh? Just buy all the chips that you can.
The AMD thing, I'm not sure if that's for AI. That's probably the continued partnerships for vehicles and GPUs. There's no infrastructure from AMD yet that's anywhere near the Nvidia level for AI training or inference for that matter. So I'm not sure that he's commenting on training or inference for that. I mean, this person says any plans to buy any chips from AMD, and it's like, yeah, of course. Like that's what's in our vehicles. It's Ryzen. But this is big news for Dojo and is very different from what he said on the earnings just like so recently. It's just kind of perplexing, honestly. It's pretty amazing. So I just it feels like two different, completely different ways to view Dojo from what he said on the earnings call to what is being said here. So I'm honestly like a bit bemused by this. I want to think that Dojo is a huge part of their plan going forward based on this, but like I don't see how you could based on the earnings call. So I don't know. I guess we'll see when this is stood up because it takes a long time to stand up a data center. It's not just going to be overnight. You know, this is in the realm of like 9 months to potentially even 18 months to get this all set up. But you know, maybe he's good at it. You know, maybe they're going to fast track it. Maybe it'll be up in 3 months. I highly doubt it. So just so people know, like Dojo isn't the generic or what's called data plane compute. They're also going to need large traditional servers for that, not GPUs, but CPUs. So think Intel or potentially even AMD, like a Google Cloud kind of transition to AMD as their kind of data plane, like generic compute, you know, for their VMs to run, because that's how you control the AI training. You control it with this generic compute. So AMD does offer a real robust solution for, you know, just like your standard 1U, 2U racked data center compute clusters. So that's potentially what he's also referring to there. So that's separate from AI training completely. It's like would never be used for AI training, in other words, at least not the kind of training that they're doing. So I just wanted to add that context.
Now, having said that, AMD did mention that they're going to go into AI training as well, right?
Yeah, they said that many years ago, and they've tried. They've tried
I think they recently said it
twice.
again.
Oh, that's great. Good for them. Let's see how they do. Intel has said the same things. I can't tell you how many times. Like, you know, I've been in this industry a long time, so it's great if they do. You know, more power to them. Let's see what kind of infrastructure and tools they can provide, you know, to the community. But the likelihood that they're going to be competitive in this is super low.
Would you recommend people buy Nvidia stock then?
This is a huge endorsement of Nvidia for Elon to say this, because if Tesla's doing this, like in any other AI native company or any company that wants or needs to be more efficient in how they handle any type of compute going forward, where they need to, you know, make better decisions with their data, they have to use AI. They just have to. You're going to be run out of business if you don't, you know, if you're a digital company or, you know, definitely an AI native company. And you have to run on Nvidia. There's no competition. There exists nothing. Nvidia has the entire market. Like they're upwards of 99% now. I mean, that's why AMD wants to be in this market, but the likelihood of that happening, even in the next 2 to 3 years, is super low. So yeah, not financial advice, obviously, but I'm considering, even though it's at an all-time high, you know, potentially putting a percent back into Nvidia, which I've had in the past off and on. But this is just, I can't even believe he said that. It's like pretty amazing. So yeah.
When you say for him to say it's a great endorsement, what do you mean specifically? Like, I don't really see anything in that reply to Sawyer
Oh, sure.
anything that endorses Nvidia.
Yeah, he's basically saying that they're going to spend several $billion just to be competitive. And that's, going to be with Nvidia. Like he's saying that very specifically. So that just means that they're going to, obviously, Microsoft is going to have to,
I don't
Facebook,
know.
Google.
I don't know if I agree with you that that's what he's saying here.
He says
So
it
this
straight
project, okay. So this
away.
project
I
is
think.
500 million. Okay, can I just? He
Go for
says
it.
this project is $500 million, right? He says table stakes for being competitive in AI is multi-billion dollars, several $billion. He says Tesla will spend more than $500 million on Nvidia hardware, but there might be another Dojo supercomputer. Is that not correct?
Yeah, he's clearly saying they're going to spend more than 500 million on Nvidia this year.
That's fine, but
Yeah.
he's not saying everything else, like everything else other than this $500 million project is going to go to Nvidia. He's not saying that.
True, but the percentage of production training that's occurring on Dojo right now is potentially zero. Because he's never said that they do production training. They said they do training, but not production. So I don't hear any of the engineers talking about it, so I assume zero until I hear engineers start talking about it. When they do, that'll be great. But right now they haven't. So I just make the assumption that the largest percent of their spend is going to be NVIDIA AI infrastructure. Just to be clear, once production does start up on training with Dojo, that will, then you'll start to see the NVIDIA spend drop. It'll peak and then fall off. But, again, I've said this so many times, Jensen is such a competitor. Like he'll go, okay, like what kind of speed ups are you getting? Show me your results. What kind of things does CUDA need to do? Like, what kind of features do you need? Do you need to scale? Like, do you need faster transfer rates? Like, he'll just like go after that like nobody's business, trying, just to be sure, like he's always top of the AI game. Like
Well,
I've seen it firsthand.
I understand Jensen is a competitive CEO, but so is Elon. So, Sawyer?
Hey guys, I'm in the car. If it's loud, that's why.
No, it's fine. We can hear you just fine.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's good to see Elon confirm that. You had so many people walk away from Tesla's Q4 earnings call thinking, well, is Elon saying Dojo's a failure? Or like he's changing tune? Look what he said. He says there's a low probability of success. Well, actually, he's been saying very similar things for over a year now. And he's basically dispelling of all that crap today with this $500 million investment announcement and confirming that. So there you go. I'm going to put that stupid narrative to bed.
Wes, my question to you is, if Nvidia is so much better, why is why not wait for more people?
No, you're sounding robotic to me. Anybody else? Or is it just me?
If Nvidia is so much better, why is this Dojo?
Well, several reasons. I think the big ones are, if people can hear me okay, if you can't, let me know. The big one is to keep NVIDIA delivering at a very fast pace and to keep Tesla requested feature sets for their type of needs at the top of essentially the stack, the priority for CUDA developers and their hardware roadmap. So their software and their hardware roadmap. NVIDIA, just like other tech companies, when you make hardware and software and services and whatnot, they have roadmaps, and those roadmaps go out 3 years. And their biggest customers always get first priority for their feature needs in that time frame. And if you ever need any like quick fixes, hot fixes, cherry pick stuff, they're at the top. So that's the next kind of reason. Then you also want to get the best prices. So the largest purchasers get the best prices. They get the top yields off of the line. They get first dibs off of any new product. They get any type of fix for the hardware first. Like they're always at the top. So they want to remain at the top. And the best way to remain at the top is not only to purchase a lot, but to also have a competitive product that competes with it. And Google does a similar thing with TPUs. So those are kind of the major reasons. And then the other reasons are a little less major. It involves how developers use the AI hardware. You want to be sure that the developers continue to understand the things that are happening in CUDA, but also are seeing better things happening on the other hardware. And then they can potentially say, hey, we just did this on this other hardware. Can you guys do this? And they go, well, no, but we can do this other thing. And they just keep pushing them even at lower levels. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've seen that happen many, many times where these lower level effects aren't like high level features, but are lower level, like more compiler type things that speed up the hardware and training aspects vastly. So I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. 5 years from today, what percent of AI training production do you think is being done on Dojo versus Nvidia clusters versus others?
I'll give you in 1 year. I think if it isn't at least 20%, I don't see them pursuing it. Mainly because they're going to have acquired so much AI training hardware on Dojo that if they can't get it to work in some X amount of time, and I'm putting a year on that time, then I can't see them pursuing it. Whereas like on Google's side, they put a certain amount of money in for 5 years, and they were seeing like several orders of magnitude improvement in cost per inference request, and speed of inference request was greatly sped up as well. So they saw the benefits, like they could see it, but Tesla hasn't realized that yet. And I think we're in year 6 now. Maybe somebody can correct me if that's wrong, but I think we're in year 6 now of Dojo development, and they still have yet to show production efficiencies. And I can't imagine X amount of time being forever. So my thought is that if you can't get at least like 1/5 of that training in another year, I just don't see them pursuing it, because it's like you can't do it for infinity. In 5 years, like I would expect all of Dojo training, and you wouldn't have any NVIDIA training anymore. And that assumes that your whole infrastructure is now built around Dojo. You don't need CUDA. You don't need any NVIDIA hardware. Your entire stack is specifically designed for Dojo. And there's other companies like uh, Chris Latner's company, which Chris used to work for Tesla. That didn't work out so well. So not sure how much Elon's going to be using the Mojo middleware stuff that Chris is building. But we, I shouldn't say we, but people in the industry, I think, would gravitate towards Dojo if Tesla like moved all the way over there. So I can see Tesla pushing extremely hard for a short term from today, like a year. And then if they do succeed, then they will be fully on Dojo within 2 years. So I wouldn't even say 5. Like it just moves way too fast for that. 5 years for AI is more than an eternity. That's like 2.5 eternities. So that would be my prediction.
All right, thank you. Sawyer, do you have anything else to add to what Wes said?
No, I was going to actually ask Wes, why do you think they would put it in Buffalo? Obviously, they have a history of having manual labelers there for FSD. And I know like Apple and many other big companies often put data centers in more cool climates because it's cheaper to keep the whole data center cold, and it's less expensive from an electricity standpoint. Um, obviously it's still in the U.S. It's near Canada, which has really cheap energy, but it's still in the U.S. and New York. I'm curious to get your thoughts on why Buffalo versus, let's say, Texas or California.
Yeah, sure. Maybe a tiny bit of reasons why data centers are where they're at. One, it's not necessarily cold anymore because most data centers are designed with this infrastructure called hot aisle, and they're actually run at more ambient temperatures and they're not cooled because the modern chips can run at much higher temperatures. So there's that. So you don't necessarily have to run them in cooler climates. The main reason where you put data centers due to like three major reasons. One of them is tax benefits, which I think is what Buffalo is offering right now. Very, very low energy costs, which also Buffalo has because of the energy generation around that area. And then I think also the major thing is partnerships, and Buffalo already has Tesla there. So I think that those kind of things make it a really good place for them to put this data center. Also, you don't want all your data centers to be localized in one area. Disaster recovery is a big concern. So, for instance, if you were thinking about, hey, like once we have one data center that's big enough to do our training, we should also have another one in another locale that can do the same amount of training so that if there was a disaster in one area, you could have a backup, a complete backup. We call that active in cloud services. So that's another potential reason why it's in Buffalo. There you go.
Appreciate the insight. I got to run, but thank you.
Yeah, sure
Okay.
thing.
I see Meta in the crowd. If he wants to come up and talk about it, otherwise, we're getting close to the end of the space. I see Gally. If he wants to come up and ask questions or comment on recent news, he's welcome to come up. Meta, any sorry we got cut off in the prior space, but we're back now. You saw Elon's replies. Any additional
I think it's
thoughts?
quite telling that Elon saying we'll buy from AMD, we're buying from Nvidia. He's talking kindly about Nvidia. I think it's one of those like, hey, look, we're not about to stop buying from Nvidia, but at the same time, maybe like Dojo getting built out a little bit. I know it can sound like sunk cost fallacy. They've already spent a whole bunch of money building these out. They're probably decent. They might as well try and build out the data center, see what they can train on it, and then either they learn from that because now they have a lot of activity on there, or they use that to help with negotiating with NVIDIA. Unclear what that would be, but it also seems like he's open to buying from AMD. So it's not about needing Dojo necessarily. I think it's just about needing more compute and getting it wherever they can.
Well, Wes says the chips coming from AMD are not going to be for AI training. He says it's going to be primarily for other purposes.
Why do you say that?
Wes?
Have you tried training anything on AMD?
Have you seen their
They just don't offer good solutions currently. Anything that rivals Nvidia.
Yeah, but have you seen the MI series?
No. Is this
Yeah,
new?
it's pretty new.
Yeah. It's totally fine if people want to like try and use AMD for AI, and if they do have a package that offers acceleration there, that's great. But I haven't seen them do anything in regards to like trying to compete with like MLPerf or offering like any type of model help for models that work better on their infrastructure, things like that. I think it sounds like they're very early days, which is great, but also like AMD can be used for generic data center compute, data plane type stuff. And also, obviously they use it for their vehicles. So they're going to, obviously they still are partnering with AMD.
Yaman, no hands mode.
Wes, I'll do a coffee bet with you. Tesla will buy AMD chips for AI training purposes in the hundreds of millions of dollars range sometime in the next 5 years.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Happy to take that.
All right.
Now that the bet has concluded,
Yeah.
Wes, they have done ML perf on the MI series, by the way.
I did not see those in the results. Where did they come in?
Do you want to just buy me my coffee now?
Oh, it's fine. If AMD competes with Nvidia in AI training, that would be wonderful. It'd be great for Nvidia to have a competitor. It'll only make the industry go faster. So it's well worth a coffee.
Yeah, if AMD enters the space, AI training space in a major way, and takes some market share from from Nvidia, Tesla is the biggest winner here. It's very important. Like if I was Elon, I would actually buy a few $100 million, even if it's somewhat inferior to Nvidia's solution for now. To the same person, same reason. Let's say one of the reasons would be to kind of keep Nvidia on their toes. Allow AMD some sort of initial startup customer to allow AMD to and work with them too, get them going a little bit.
Yeah, I think from my understanding, AMD's like chips at a hardware level look stronger and more powerful, but they always lose at the compiler level, which is where NVIDIA's got its biggest strengths right now. So the theory is you can always buy the AMD chips now and hope that their compilers get better eventually down the line.
Would you do that?
I think you basically calculate your compute per dollar. You have to buy them in large chunks, like tens of thousands. And then you basically just buy whichever one is cheapest, but going to keep you homogenous as much as possible, right? Like doing a huge, like if they could get 20 to 40% more compute power going with AMD, and the compiler makes it effectively that they're only getting, say, 10 or 20% uplift, I don't know why you wouldn't do that. Like, I don't think you have to spend time doing CUDA optimizations to squeeze every bit of performance you can out of your NVIDIA hardware. You could just say, okay, we're just going to do things in a more generic way. We're going to get more compute and we're going to be a little bit more hardware agnostic.
Say I'm looking at the results and they only submitted CPUs. I don't see any GPUs that were submitted. Is that your understanding?
I thought they did submit GPUs. Give me 1 second. I'll try to find it for you.
All right. Yeah, I'm just seeing the Epic Genoa CPU. Anyway.
And a question for Meta, 2 questions. One, in 5 years' time, what percent of Tesla's AI training do you think will be done on Nvidia chips, Dojo, and AMD, and others? So 4 categories: Nvidia, Dojo, AMD, and other. That's question
Really
number
hard
1.
to, it's really hard to predict. It depends on the success of Dojo. From a cost perspective, even if Dojo is successful, NVIDIA may still end up being cheaper because they have such high margins, they could really just keep cutting the prices down for special deals. So my gut says it's probably still going to be dominated by Nvidia.
Okay, but are you saying like 80% Nvidia and then 20% Dojo, 0 for AMD and others? Like, can you
I don't,
just, you're given
I
what we
don't.
know today.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to give percentages. I could maybe do a stack rank and say it'd probably go Nvidia and then either probably Dojo AMD or AMD Dojo. I don't know about others. I don't know if I think it's more of a AMD serves the purpose that Dojo did, which is negotiation power with Nvidia. But really what they want is Nvidia chips.
And then the second question is, if I have an AI model being trained on NVIDIA chips, and Elon walks in and says, I want you to train this on Dojo. I don't care how much time it takes, how much more money it costs, and now I'm kind of like stuck with it. How much time would it take me to convert it, make the necessary adjustments so that I can train it on Dojo?
Assuming it's written in C++, it comes down to if there's an adapter or something that has been written. The more optimized the code was for NVIDIA, the longer it will take for you to port it. If they didn't do any kind of like optimizations or anything along those lines, they're probably fine.
So it's doable. It's not ideal from an engineer's perspective, but it's doable, and it wouldn't break the bank for Dojo. Wes, do you agree with that?
Potentially. If anything's doable. I just don't know how probable it would be.
What's the incremental cost? Let's say, okay, I guess you guys don't want to answer this question. What do you want to talk about?
Hey, I've only got a few more minutes, but I did look up. AMD has an accelerator that they've designed for HPC. They say AI too, but it looks way more like it's geared towards high performance computing, which is more, in the data analysis sector and trying to churn out results for like financial algorithms and whatnot, and like weather prediction and stuff like that. More traditional ways of looking at data rather than AI. And granted, they might be trying with AI, but it seems like it's more geared towards HPC. But that's from the little bit that I hadn't even heard about this accelerator. So kudos to Meta for pointing that out, because I had to dig a little bit through results and try to find this accelerator that AMD put up.
Yeah, they haven't done a great job. I think right now it's just the key thing is it has more memory. Like it's a husk that has potential, but it needs the software to make it shine. And I think there have been some folks claiming that maybe the divide's getting less and less, but I think there's a bit of a industry wants something to be true versus it's actually true. There's a lot of companies out there that are probably rooting for AMD so that Nvidia has some competition so that their costs can come down.
Yeah, it'd be great if there was more competition from a company that was actually making GPUs to compete with NVIDIA, rather than these other companies that have to get in the game just to keep NVIDIA honest, essentially.
And it also has to be a company that's not going to hide it behind a cloud.
That's true, because we are aware of some of those.
Do you guys have any shares in NVIDIA or AMD?
I have probably some through index funds.
Same. I used to be a very huge supporter of AMD back when I worked at Dell. Even though we didn't have any type of supply chain from them, I was always rooting for them because Intel had such a stranglehold on the industry. And they've done pretty well over the years. And when they bought ATI, I was hoping that they would, really take off. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I used to own them. And obviously, Nvidia, I've owned for many decades. And I need to peace out. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I think from this space, I got more things I need to research. So thank you. Always a different experience, Yaman.
Yeah, it's evolving. It's a moving target. You never know what you're gonna get. Like even when I enter the space, when I start the space, I have no idea what the discussion is gonna be that day.
Did you see that Omar is going to be doing a comparison drive between V11 and V12?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm pretty excited for this. That's going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. As a reminder to people, we're not accepting any request to speak, especially from people I've never seen before. If you have a request to speak and you're not accepted, you're welcome to submit your question or comment in the replies. If you continue to request to speak, I will kick you off the space. Henry has a comment in the replies. Meta, I'm going to read this. It's a bit of a long one. Let's see if you agree with it. Henry says, the reason Elon Musk said what he said about Dojo is because the demand for AI chips went berserk in 2023. Tesla had a shot prior to this event because Nvidia was focused on a general application chip that could do more than just AI applications. The Dojo chip's advantage was that it can be designed to do this niche workload better than Nvidia could with this general purpose GPU. Now that there's insane demand for this particular application, Nvidia will focus a shit ton more R&D and other resources to be the absolute best at AI applications. Tesla doesn't have the resources to compete with Nvidia now that their focus has shifted. The only chance Tesla's Dojo has now if they partner with Lisa Su and AMD to take on Nvidia. The team that designed Dojo came from AMD. They are using similar approaches with MCM designs. Jim Keller had his hands on Dojo and EPIC products. Both companies need to do something to bridge the gap between them and Nvidia, in his opinion. What do you think?
Some of the claims that were made at the Dojo announcement, I'm just going based on what the claims were, if I recall correctly, was that it takes about 2 years to fabricate and 4 years to design a chip. If that's true, and hold me to if you don't recall that exactly that way, but if that is true, then it was about 2 years later that the H100s came out after the Dojo announcement. So it's unlikely that NVIDIA was operating in a silo, completely unaware that AI is coming, and Tesla did the presentation, and then NVIDIA was like, oh, we should probably do something similar. And then that's what kicked them off to do it, designed it, fabricated it, and got it all done within 2 years and started selling it. So I think more likely what happened is everybody was in the same direction. Other companies weren't talking about it, and Tesla announced. And so perception from like at least retail investor side is that they came out first. If you recall in spaces back then, we talked about the same thing, and people talked about they're just gonna be a cloud compute and this and the other, and I kept saying like that doesn't actually make any sense, right? They're gonna have to satisfy their own needs first. And then the last thing that's a bullet point on this is like by the time the TPU4 paper came out, they mentioned how it was already in production for a year or more. I don't remember how long they said. So that paper came out, I think, a year after Dojo. So by the time Dojo was announced, there was already something arguably more power efficient and advanced already in production at scale. So I, I think there's a big difference between this industry being secretive, and some companies being further ahead versus, you know, where what was available to Tesla. So Tesla couldn't purchase something or hang their hat on something they didn't know was coming. So I think in the vacuum of time at that point, it made sense to try and make a bet on it. Even if they didn't get there, it might still make sense to do it if it per unit ends up being cheaper for them. They could make less efficient machines. They don't have to be more efficient. As long as per dollar it comes out to be less, it's fine. And when I say per dollar, I mean per dollar of electricity and per dollar of fabrication, which should be pretty close.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Not really. I think I want to go research more about this 4680s. And yeah, I think I just have more stuff to read up on.
The BYD stuff?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I don't know how to find out like their roadmaps or plans or anything like this. So I'm trying to like figure out what's a good way to find out other than like asking people who speak Chinese on Twitter or Mandarin, sorry.
Yeah, you can. Did you try asking Ray?
I did. He didn't respond. I was just
Oh, okay.
curious, like, what was the context behind this photo? He like posted the photo and it's like, are you at an auto convention? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. I mean,
And
we're
I'm
looking
looking
at.
up.
Uh,
As I'm looking it up, there's a lot of information. Like, you can even purchase 4680 LFP batteries, but they're all like box shaped. So I don't know why they're being called 4680s. I'm a little bit confused as to what's going on because 4680 is about the cylindrical shape.